Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ganyan, thank you for stopping by. Today we're talking about Remnant from the Ashes. Just before the release of Remnant 2, which is hopefully coming this summer, I decided to go back and play this game because I got it for free on PlayStation Plus a while ago, and I really have been enjoying it, and I thought it's worthwhile to talk about it and make a video about it because it's a really fun game. But before we do that, if you like the video, please like, subscribe, share, because only 2% of my viewers are subscribed and it would really help out the channel if you do so. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So let's start with what it actually is, Remnant from the Ashes. It's like a mix between a Souls-like and a roguelike game. The terrain is randomly generated, so every time you play a map it's gonna have a different layout. The enemies are gonna be laid out differently, and the bosses even are gonna be different. For example, you can play the whole game and not encounter 2 or 3 bosses that you might encounter in another playthrough, which makes the game more replayable and more fun to go through again and again to get new loot, because the loot is also connected to the bosses. Just like how it is in Souls, where you kill a boss, you get the loot from it, and you can go back to your camp and turn that to a weapon. It's the same idea here. You can fight a boss, get something unique equipment thing from it, go back to your camp and turn that equipment into a weapon. And it makes it more unique, more fun, just like it is in Souls. It makes you emotionally connected to the bosses, and it makes the fight worthwhile. It's not just gonna be just a fight for fight's sake. It's gonna be for the loot. And the loot is not randomly generated. It's gonna be tied to specific bosses. Each boss has a specific loot piece that's connected to it, just like it is in Souls. Some loot pieces you can get hidden around in the world, like it is in Souls, from little mobs or from different hidden locations. So the loot game in this game is basically how it is in Souls. But it is very much incentivized that you do replay the game because you cannot get all the gear pieces in one playthrough. It's just not possible to get everything in one playthrough, which makes it, again, more fun to replay the game, and it really emphasizes the build variety. When it comes to builds, the game has some build variety. It's not gonna be as in-depth as it is in Souls. You start by choosing one of 3 classes, and just like it is in Dark Souls, you choose it, but you're not really tied to it. You can still put your points in different specific skills and morph your character into whatever you want it to do. So you're not really stuck to the specific starting archetype. It just affects the trait that you start with, which is the skills that you have. Traits are skills that you unlock through the game and you level up to give you specific benefits like better recall, better mod duration, more health, less stamina costs, stuff like this, the usual. But it's really done well here because there's a lot of levels and you don't feel very pressured to spend it in the right place. And you can also respec in the end of the game. If you finish the game, you can respec your points, so don't be afraid of spending it in the wrong location. Before I get too in depth with it, just like all my other videos, I want to mention that I'm just a fan. I'm talking about this game as a fan who loves to play it and not as an expert. I don't have 1,000 hours in it, I have less than 100 hours in it, so I'm not talking out of experience like a dev. I just want to talk about stuff that I like, and if you have different opinions, then be sure to let me know down in the comments, because it is very much entertaining to get to know different ideas and opinions when it comes to games. So I just wanted to point that out real fast. And now let's get back to the character creation. Basically, your character has the traits that I mentioned, has one small weapon, one primary weapon, one trinket, one melee weapon, and 2 mods, basically rings that you can add just like it is in Dark Souls, and each gear piece, and there are 3 gear pieces for each character. So the loot is gonna be split between these things. There are different armor sets, just like you would expect, different weapons, and I just wanna mention that the weapons are really unique. Each weapon has a different variance and different feel to it, different vibe. It's very much like Dark Souls. You're gonna have a different time with each weapon. But I suspect that most people would just find a weapon that they like and stick to it, just like they do in Dark Souls. But you can experiment a lot, that's my point here, that there are a lot of different weapons and each one is unique. You're not gonna find 2 guns that behave the same way, each weapon is different. And each weapon has a mod that makes it even more unique. So you're not just gonna have a shotgun, you're gonna have a shotgun that, I don't know, has fire bullets as a mod that recharges when you kill enemies, and you can apply this mod each like 1 minute or something, or maybe less if you spec into it in the right way. So point is, the weapons are unique and fun. The armor sets are really nice. I really do love the design. It's not the cartoony type, but it's also not super dark and serious. It's kind of in between, and I really like that style. I do hope that they put more armors in the game with Remnant 2. That's my hope, because there are a lot here, but not as much as Dark Souls, for example. And don't take a shot every time I say Dark Souls, because you would be dead by now. So, other than the armors, I already mentioned the weapons, the mods, trinkets. The rings behave like Dark Souls. You're gonna have rings with different buffs, just like you would expect. Same thing with the trinkets. And there's not more to it. It just emphasizes your playstyle and helps your build be more special. Back when the game released, it wasn't that much build variety in the game, but since then we got two DLCs, the Swamps of Courses and the Subject some big number thing. Both added new loot, more variety, and it makes you have more options for different character builds. And I really do like that. And speaking of the DLC, they are really nice. The Swamps of Courses one focuses on a main area in the main game, fleshes it out more, adds more bosses to it, adds a survivor mode, which is basically a roguelike minigame in the game, and the other DLC basically adds a new area with new bosses, new enemies, like a whole big expansion kind of thing. And it's really fun. You can see the gameplay of it. It has different enemies, unique stuff that you can get, a whole new ability type, a new elemental attack, being the cold one, Frost. So there's a lot of variety. That's what I'm trying to say. You can build your character in very different ways. Another thing I wanted to mention is the locations in the game. There are a total of 4 planets in the main game and one extra one in the DLC, so that adds up to 5 different locations. Each one is different. One of them is the normal planet overtaken by monsters kind of deal, Earth basically. There's a desert one, there's one with a swamp that comes fleshed out with the DLC, and there's one that's in a mystical jungle type location, that's 4 in the main game, and there's the Frost Winter type DLC, which adds that location. So 5 different locations, each one has different and unique enemies, bosses, locations, and it really makes the variety a lot of fun in these games. One of my complaints with, for example, Dark Souls 1 is that the locations aren't too varied. They are varied, don't get me wrong, I love Dark Souls 1, but they aren't too different from each other, except an Orlando or Lost Izalith. But here in this game, 5 locations, each one is different, big bosses. It's really fun, different unique weapons, elements, whatever. It's really fun, basically, what I'm trying to say. And now let's take a second to talk about the progression in the game. It basically boils down to you going to a location, fighting enemies there in the open world, entering a dungeon, fighting through the dungeon, and then fighting a boss in the end of the dungeon. That is what it boils down to. Most of the times you can find side dungeons that you can find different bosses in, but most of the time this is what you're gonna do. Get to a location, fight enemies, fight a dungeon, and then fight a boss. And you just repeat that 5-6 times and you finish the game. It's not the longest game out there, but it has a lot of replayability, so you're gonna play it multiple times, which in my humble opinion I do appreciate. I'd rather have a short game that I wanna replay than a long game that I don't wanna replay. So it's a good point in my book, but it's up to you. If you don't like short games, maybe you're not gonna like this one. It took me about 15 hours to complete the game. First time it took me more, it took me about 30, but it's because I was stupid, I got lost and I just didn't know what the hell was happening. But when I got used to it and I know how to beat the game, it takes about 10-15 hours to do so, without counting the DLC. The DLC alone is an extra 10 hours or 5, so there's a lot of value here, at least in my opinion, if you replay the game. If you don't, not so much, but also if you don't, it's really cheap now. I think it's on sale right now, so you can get it for cheap, and in general they do have a lot of sales on this game, so you're not gonna be losing any value. You're gonna buy it cheap. Even if you buy it full price, it's way cheaper than a full AAA game, and honestly, AAA games lately have been just stealing our money and not really giving us that much value back. And I really do think this game deserves your money. If you do like Souls games, and I really wouldn't describe it as a shooter looter, this is a side tangent I wanted to mention. I've seen a lot of people mention this game as a looter shooter, but it's not. You're not gonna be re-changing your guns, you're not gonna be just getting new equipment every 2 seconds like Borderlands. No, it's not like that at all. Like I said, it's more like Dark Souls. You get the weapon, you love it, you stick to it, and you also get new weapons every like 30 minutes or something, maybe more. It's not a looter shooter, I just wanted to point that out real quick. Now when it comes to Endgame, the game has some of it. I wouldn't say it has specific raid bosses, but you can replay the game in harder difficulties. There are a total of 4 difficulties, I only played it on 2 of them, but the last 2 are just way too hard for me. If you're a hardcore gamer, you're gonna love it, but for me, it's just a little too hard. But point being, you can replay the game just like if you played Borderlands 2, Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, you can do that here, which in my opinion is even better than having one raid boss to do like in Borderlands 3. I'd rather replay the whole game on a harder difficulty than fight one boss over and over and over. So there is plenty of endgame, you can play it again with different characters, different builds, different weapons, and like I already mentioned, there's a lot of variety here. You can build characters in very different ways, focus on elements, well, melee weapons, small weapons, just a mix of all. You can have a lot of variety, which again adds to the replay value, and I really think this game has a lot of that. I would love to sit here and talk about this game for another hour or two, but sadly I'm no expert, so eventually I will just start mumbling. I already think that I did that, but for now, all I wanted to say about this game has already been said. It's a fun game. If you like Souls-like games, you're gonna enjoy this one. It's Souls with guns. And if you compare it to other Souls-like games, this one is polished. It's very fun. It works really good. It looks good. It feels good. The iframes are good, just like in Dark Souls. Rolling feels good. Shooting feels good. The enemies behave in a good way. There's no jank here. The game is well polished. That's my main impression of this game. It's really polished. Not like other Souls-like games. Most of the time that's why I don't play other Souls-like games, because they're not really polished. You can just see the huge difference between them and Dark Souls. With this game, it's really just... you can feel the AAA vibe from it, even though it's a AA game. You can feel like it's a AAA game. Everything moves good, everything feels good, everything looks good, and I just had a great time with it, and I don't have anything else to add. It's a fun game. If you didn't try it already, be sure to do so. It's cheap, it will give you a lot of value, and if you like Souls game, this is gonna be really fun. And I know I didn't mention the bosses in the video, but I don't have a lot to say about them. They are fun to fight, unique, I like them, but I don't want to spoil them for you, so I didn't mention them. But before I close off the video, I wanted to take a minute to talk about Remnant 2. It's my most anticipated game, okay, maybe the second most anticipated game after Starfield and Spider-Man 2, I don't know, but it is one of my most anticipated games this year. Remnant 2 looks great, looks like it just improves on Remnant 1 in every single way. Seems like we're gonna have more traits, more character customization, more weapons, more locations. It really seems like a sequel as a sequel should be. It just improves on everything that Remnant 1 does. And I think it's coming out this summer, and I think if you're gonna play it, be sure to play Remnant 1 before you play Remnant 2. This is a good preparation for Remnant 2, and if you're anything like me, trust me, if you play Remnant 1, you're gonna have a very much anticipated game put on your list being Remnant 2. Because I honestly think this game is gonna be great, and I really think this is gonna be like the jump between Borderlands 1 and 2. It's gonna be amazing, at least in my humble opinion. I really hope that I'm not gonna be let down like Cyberpunk, but we're gonna have to wait and see. For now, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, it really means a lot. If you like it, like, subscribe, check out other videos on the channel, they're on your screen right now. And as usual, thank you for watching and have a nice day.